Welcome, Chef Jennifer.
Hello, thank you, Larissa. Thank you, Natalie. And thank you, everyone, for joining me today. I'm absolutely delighted to be here and to share a fresh summer feast with you. I'm extremely pleased to see in the video gallery that some of you are going to be cuisining along. So we're going to get started very shortly. Again, as Larissa has said, the context of this dish is my love of produce, my love of fresh produce, and my excitement at visiting the farmers market every week and seeing wonderful fresh produce that we can make into simple, healthy and delicious meals. And at this point in the summer, I feel we're at a juncture where we have the classic summer berries, cherries, stone fruit and melons, and at the same time we're bringing in the new season apples, the corn, the squash, the onions. So this is just an opportunity to celebrate. So today we're going to make two dishes, and Natalie has very kindly posted the recipes, which should be in the chat. We're going to start with a very light summer soup. So let's get started. Our ingredients are ripe peaches or nectarines, tomatoes, a stick of celery, half a mango, some edible flowers, which will be for our garnish, and a head of little gem lettuce, or any kind of lettuce that's firm in structure, such as this one. And we're going to start with our cucumber. I would say for 10 months of the year, we're dealing with the long, slender cucumbers. And here now we're having much more variety, and I just couldn't resist showing you these, which my friend grew. And these are baby French tomatoes, and they're very knobbly and cute. So it's just really me exhorting you to visit your farmers market and have a poke around community gardening projects and see if you can find some unusual veg, because now is the time. Now, the cucumber isn't going in the soup, it's going in the base of the soup dish to add some texture, because we can get very creative with raw foods and bring on a lot of mouthfeel and exciting sensations as we're eating, which means that we don't need to overload our meals with stimulating flavors, oil and salt. We can get our excitement in other ways. And I've specified half a cucumber. This is, so we're just going to, I've taken the end off here with my chef knife, and I'm just going to go down about halfway, and we'll put the rest there. And because this is a garnish, we're thinking about presentation. So I'm going to use a veg peeler. So hopefully you'll have a veg peeler somewhere handy in your kitchen if you're chefing along with me. And we're just going to take the skin off the cucumber. I'm guessing that everyone watching does have a peeler. Pay attention, because these can get slippery. We don't want an accident. So there we are. So I've removed the skin from my cucumber, and I've got a compost bucket down here. So that's that. Now, what we're doing with the cucumber to create texture is either grating it or in some other way creating a little texture. And because I'm going to use a special tool a bit later to make the zoodles with, perhaps one you haven't made zoodles with before, I thought I'd spotlight its versatility and show you how to grate using a mandolin. Now, if you've got a grater in your cupboard, I would suggest you just start grating now. But I'd like to show you the mandolin, and I'm going to talk about this in more detail when we're spiralizing. It's a piece of equipment I was afraid of for a very long time, because frankly it looks very scary with blades and teeth, and yes, you've got an actual kind of guillotine type blade in there. It's very sharp. But I've come to trust this machine and be mindful and really get great results using it. So I'm putting on a cut glove, because even though this comes with a slider, I don't trust the slider not to slip. And these blades are extremely sharp. So I'm going to take my cucumber, flat side down, short side down, I should say. And I'm just going to go back and forth with the julienne blade on my mandolin, and you may be able to see underneath we've got a pile of cucumber shreds emerging, and you can see that my hand can go fairly close to the blade with the glove on, closer than if I was using the hand guard. And then we've got a spare piece of cucumber here that can go in the soup. So thank you to the mandolin. I'm hoping that those of you who are chefing with me at home have had enough time to grate some carrot. And what we're going to do is set in the bottom of our serving bowl for later. This is quite a small serving bowl. It's probably going to make twice as much as this, but bearing in mind I'm going to be taking some hopefully fancy photos later, I'm just going to do about half a serving in here. So I'm going to just pick up my shreds and put them in a little bowl there, and then that's a nice surprise when you're eating it to find some texture in the bottom. And you'll see that I have some spare cucumber, which is perfect because that's going to be a garnish. So I'm just going to take a small bowl and plop my remaining cucumber in the bowl, and we'll set that aside for later. I'm just going to wash my hands now, and that's something I should have done before beginning, even though they are clean, but just to have good chef etiquette. Another aspect of chef etiquette would be thinking about your hair when you're preparing food for other people. For other people, I might have pinned it back or worn a little hat, but because it's just for me, I've pinned it back, but it's something to consider. Okay, so we've got our grated cucumber ready to bring the dish together, and we've got a separate pile of grated cucumber ready for garnish. So let's move on to making the soup itself, and it is so simple. And I call it Peach Dream because, having tasted it, I was amazed at how good it tasted. It felt like a dream. I couldn't believe how simple the soup was and how amazing it tastes. And I really hope that you'll have that experience too. So I've specified 2 peaches or nectarines. I happen to have these Saturn peaches or donut peaches, which have a smaller pit and they're quite flat. And they tend to be a little bit smaller than regular nectarines. I was hoping on these to be ready, but he's taking his time and we respect that. So if you take your peaches onto your chopping board, and I'm going to suggest a slicing technique, which is just to put your chef knife in and go into the middle of the flesh, close to the blade, and then rotate the knife round, and then you can twist the apart. And then I just tend to go in with my thumb and finger and sort of wrench out the stone. And there we've got one peach. So let's do that again. Taking the chef knife, inserting it into the peach till you meet the stone, and then gently twisting, moving the knife around, twisting the peach open, and then pulling out the stone. And it's worth having a look, because sometimes you find some sort of grainy bits left in the peach, and we don't want anything unwanted in our soup. And let's just do one more. I've twisted the knife around the edge. I'm slowly pulling the peach apart. And yes, there's a little bit of something that we don't want in our soup, so I'm going to take that away and remove the stone. So we have our wonderful peaches here. Let's just roughly chop them, because to be honest, if you're using a high-speed blender such as a Vitamix, you could put them in whole and it would be fine. But we're going to help the blender along. And incidentally, this recipe would work very well in a NutriBullet style blender, or even a hand blender if it came to it. It's a very easy blend recipe. So let's just rough chop our peaches into chunks. When you've done that, do the blender. Let's leave that here. Now, the next ingredient was really the inspiration behind this whole dish. It's tomatoes, and not just any tomatoes. These are grown by a very loving and caring company in the Isle of Wight, and they only grow tomatoes. And they very generously sent me 3 kilos of tomatoes to play with, so I'd like to thank them publicly. And they're called the Tomato Stall, and they'll send you a box of tomatoes to your home. And just really just look at the variety. We've got these wonderful brown colour, these gorgeous yellow ones, and some smaller cherry tomatoes that we use later on the Noodles dish. And they'll send that out as a mixed box, and I really recommend that company. But Dr. Graham is quite blessed where he lives in West Sussex, because he's got a top tomato producer down there. He's got a company called Nutborn, and they're really fabulous. And if you get the opportunity to buy Nutborn tomatoes, I would suggest it. But of course, the thing to do is, yeah, I would agree with you. They're really fantastic.
It's not why we moved here, but it was a bonus.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, move to the food, it makes sense. So I've specified 2 to 3 medium tomatoes, and what I've selected is this sort of colour trinity of red, yellow and orange, which is going to be a bit of a theme. And again, the blender could handle this quite easily, but let's just assist. Let's just chop our tomatoes.
Jennifer, what did you say was the name of the tomato company that you got that delivery from?
They're called the Tomato Stall.
Easy. Thank you.
The other thing to look for, if you're looking for them, is Isle of Wight, WIGHT, tomatoes.
Thank you.
And I hope you've all been able to enjoy tomato abundance in August. So let's just slide those in. Now we'll go for the orange one. And of course, every colour.
Jennifer, I like your scooper. Really cool.
Well, this is a tip from my teacher, Elena Love. She calls it a bash and chop. but I bought this in a supermarket. It's called a pastry scraper. And what it enables me to do is not be trying to sort of shimmy my board around and try and get too much onto my knife, because I like to use my knife as sparingly as possible. But this, you can just sort of go in with your hand and scoop underneath and throw it in. And if anyone is in the UK, this cost me £3 in Morrison's supermarket. So that's a top tip. And then we'll just put in our final fancy tomato, which is a yellow one. Oops. Oh, au revoir, dropped one. And we'll may as well put in this final piece of cucumber just to use it. Okay, so we've got some fabulous fruity ingredients here. And if we were to blend that, we would find ourselves with a wonderful dressing that would absolutely be perfect on zoodles or as a salad dressing. So that might be something you could try for yourself if you're repeating this dish, is before you add the other ingredients, just sample it and think, could that work for my salads? I've also suggested a large stick of celery. I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts as to why I'm adding celery to a fruity dish.
Because it tastes good.
Yes, it tastes good. And yeah, it balances out the sweet. It balances out the sweet.
Mm.
So there we are. In it goes. And there's one more ingredient, but we're not going to add it just yet. The final ingredient would be mango, but that's a sweetener, and we might find that what we've got already is sweet enough. So let's see. We're going to put in some water, as it is soup. I'm going to put in, I've got a cup measured here, I'm going to put in about half just to get the blender going, because as you know, once the water's gone in, it can't be subtracted. And you may have your own preference for how thick or how runny you prefer your soup. Now, I'm thinking we might not need the tamper with this recipe. I do have the wide mouth Vitamix, and I find it does get things moving a lot faster, but if you might need a tamper, so let's see. So lid on, check the lid is on, check the plug is in, otherwise you'll be Jackson Pollocking your ceiling. There we are, that's ready to go.
It does sound a little like Luke Skywalker when you turn that thing on.
So let's recap. I've got in the blender some peaches, some tomatoes, some celery and some water. And I've just given it a first whiz, and this is really just to taste test. And so I'm going to show you a way of testing your food. If you're just eating it yourself, you can just go in with the spoon and put straight back in. But if you're serving for other people, what you may do is take out a spoonful and just drop it on the back of your hand and then give it a lick. Then you can reuse the spoon. Now, I wonder if you've all had time to take a little taste. If, like me, you find that it's got a nice taste, but quite a pronounced savoury flavour, then this is where the mango comes in, because the mango is that much sweeter than a peach. So this is surefire guaranteed to bring your sweetness up. And if you look back over past shows, you'll find that the mango is highlighted in many, many recipes in our low-fat community. And I'm sure there are people watching now who could eulogize about mangoes just as I've eulogized about mine, because they really make a lot of things happen. So I've got my mango here. I'm going to take my knife. It's sitting down on the end of the mango where it would have been attached to the tree. I'm going to put my knife in where I imagine the stone to be and just slice down. Oh, there we are. And this is a bit of an unusual mango because it looks to be a very small stone. I don't know if you can see that. And I'd actually be interested in Dr. Graham's professional opinion, because this is a mango variety I hadn't come across before. It's called a Noah mango, N-O-A, and it's from Israel.
I was going to say it looks like an Israeli mango. I didn't want to stick my foot in my mouth.
No,
well, everybody
right.
agrees, right? Everybody agrees that the seedless mango will be a real treat, like the seedless avocado. It'll just be an improvement.
Yeah.
And Israel is one of the two countries right now that is leading in creating new varieties of mango. And they're not doing anything sinister, but just selectively breeding as we've always done for smaller and smaller seed.
That's really interesting, and that really brings the conversation, that really sort of settles the conversation, because it is, as you can see, it's a very small, which is good, because it means we get more flesh. So what I've got here is about 1 cheek of mango, but it's quite a small one, quite a small cheek of mango. So let's go in with the mango. If you didn't have mango, you could use a date, but mango is optimal for food combining. So that's one of the reasons for using it. So on my bash and chop, plop some in. Let's recalibrate. Lid on firmly and blend. We'll taste test again, because we get to eat how we like it. So let's take the time to get it right. Back of the hand with the spoon. Yeah, that's nice. So of course you can add more mango if you prefer. I'm going to just put in this final piece, and then before the final blend I'm going to check the consistency, because this is going to be a soup, so we want it to be pleasing to us in terms of how right. So maybe put a theme you'd like to create.
So good. Oh my gosh.
How's yours, Larissa?
Delicious. I'm already eating.
Oh,
sorry guys, cannot wait.
No, it's so exciting. I get very excited about this dish, and in fact, if it, but it's not particularly calorie dense. But I could just eat. I could just have so much of this food. Of course, really, I'm calling it Peach Dream, but it's effectively a gazpacho. It's a cold summer soup. So I've put in some more water because I think that would suit me better. And we're going to do a final blend. And you're just blending to combine the water at this point. So we don't want to bash the food too hard. But you've also got a decision to make about how speckly you want your soup, because obviously the further you blend it, the more the colour from the peach skin and the tomato skin will blend away. So that's your choice. So I've just gone for a quickish blend. You can see we've got quite a lot of soup here, so this is definitely enough to share if you're feeling generous. Okay, now before we plate the soup, we've got one more thing to do, and that's our little gem lettuce. Now, how are we going to involve a little gem lettuce in a soup? Well, the answer is we're going to make scoopers or dippers out of it, because we can eat our soup with our hands. We're going to give ourselves a fun experience of enjoying our soup. Of course, there's always the spoon, but let's make some dippers. So I've got my little gem. As you can see, there's a kind of brown stalky bit on the end. So we just move, and we're going to pick some of the outer leaves away. And as you can see, my theme today is variety and colour. And I was able to find a red gem lettuce that has some red tones at the tip, and I think that just looks lovely. So the number's up to you. Depends how much green you'd like to eat, and if you've already had a lot of greens earlier in the day, perhaps you've had a green smoothie, you might not feel you want some greens, whereas if you've had mostly fruit in the day, you might feel actually I would prepare the whole leaf. So our little gem is ready there. So I hope everyone's with me at this point. I hope everyone's got their soup in a container, their grated cuke in somewhere handy, their bowl where we've already started to assemble the dish, the little gem lettuce, which is going to, and then the final ingredient, if you're able to find it, and I appreciate that not everybody can, is some edible flowers. And I'm very fortunate that I've got an extremely talented gardener friend a few doors down, and I was able to pluck some delicious blooms from her garden. But I've got a couple of hanging baskets at the front of my place, and pansies grow very happily there, and pansies are edible too. So it might be worth looking up edible flower in your food. Okay, now I know you're all wanting to do this. So we've got our cuke in the bowl, we've got our jug in our hand, so steady hand. We're just going to pour the soup over the bowl, and now I'm getting excited because I just love this so much. And as you can see, there's plenty because I'm doing a sort of dainty portion. So I'm going to take the rest of my soup and put it in a jug, and let's be honest, I will be eating it later myself. And so let's just do that now. So I don't really, you can take the spatula and get some out, but this soup is so compatible with the dressing we're about to make that we don't need to clean the blender out. So that's great, isn't it? All right, so let's put the spare soup out of sight. And here's our bowl ready to decorate. And the first thing I would suggest is going on with your grated cucumber as much as you'd like. The skin off, that it really does make the dish more visually appealing. And the next thing we're going to do is a little bit of artistry. So I'm really looking forward to seeing your creations at the end, and if you are able to email them to Larissa. So she has such a wonderful eye. Got some tiny borage here, which is known as starflower. So I'm just going to scatter a few on.
Jennifer,
I've got some calendula petals.
Tell us again what you did with that lovely red gem lettuce?
Oh yes, happily. So what I did with the little gem, here it is. So this is what's left of it, but when it was whole, I placed it on the board, the end off, and then some leaves out, and I've put them on one side. Does that answer the question? Yes. And if you didn't have little gem, it would need to be a firm lettuce like romaine.
And then what did you do?
Okay. Well, we're about to use it now.
That's what
Now we've, yeah. So you can see, hopefully you've got a work of art here, because nature is just amazing. And then try to resist the temptation to start eating it. But what I like to do, you could very easily just have these on a salad plate on the side. But I like to tuck them in round the edge of the bowl, like little sentinels. Do you see where we're going with this?
It's beautiful.
So I've got my leaves. There we are. And so the leaves are kind of, the lettuce is kind of saying hello to the soup, and the soup's saying hello to the flowers, and they're all getting to know each other. And there's our soup ready to eat in a short while.
Well, my
So
lettuce
let's
is very happy in the soup. You guys can see.
Yeah,
Beautiful, Larissa.
but
Yeah, thank you.
oh my goodness, that looks adorable. So we're going to move on to familiar ground, I think, for a lot of people, which will be zoodles. And you may well be familiar with a spiralizer, and if not, I would recommend Chef Louise's excellent bolognese video, where she demonstrates and talks about the spiralizer. And I wouldn't be without the spiralizer, but I am lately just in love with my mandolin. And so we're about to make this zoodles dish, which is essentially courgettes or zucchini made into long strips. And then we're going to bathe those zoodles in another delicious sauce and build on some texture and flavour and colour through some added extras. So I hope everyone's ready to start with that. This is my mandolin, and it's called a progressive mandolin. That's the name of the brand. And it's a little bit too big for my board, so I'm going to take this board away. Do you really want it on a flat surface? So I happen to have a board under a board, which is helpful. And the mandolin comes with different blades. It comes with a straight blade, a julienne blade, and a waffle blade. And it comes with different finenesses. I'm not sure if that's the word. Widths. So for a noodle, we're going on, I've got it on the second notch. I wish I had a little bit more time to talk about this, but we're going to have to keep moving. And I've selected the julienne blade here. So I like this machine because, in my opinion, it's very safe, and I feel completely safe with it, especially with the cuttings. And these are machine washable, and they keep you safe. And the number one rule in the kitchen is safety. Now, I don't want to frighten anyone, but I have got a really unusual and interesting courgette here. I hope you'll agree he's a bit special. And this is a trumpet. We're going to use about half of this trumpetino, I think. Let me just put that to the side again. Because he's a pale colour, I'm going to keep the skin on for zoodles, and that's entirely your preference. You can keep the skin on if your zoodles are going to be green. You might like to remove them with a cucumber peeler, as I demonstrated earlier. and that will give you possibly a more sort of sophisticated look. But if you do take the skin off the zoodles, they do become more absorbent, I've noticed. So they may become mushy in the sauce, but again, you've probably got your own preference when it comes to that. So I'm going to demonstrate making noodles with the mandolin, and it's a slice down. And hopefully you can see underneath beautiful zoodles emerging. And the benefit of using the mandolin, one of the many benefits, is that you don't need to chop the zoodles afterwards because they're pretty much a good size. I mean, in all honesty, the spiralizer will get you more of a spaghetti, more of a spaghetti that will twirl and sit in a bowl. But I think the payoff for using this machine is great because it's so fast. It's much easier to clean than a spiralizer as well. And I believe there's less waste. You can see that I'm able to go really close to the blade with this glove on. So let's just give it a tap. My trusty scraper. And we're going to put our zoodles in a bowl, ready for the sauce. Okay, now that's not enough for a low-fat raw vegan, is it? We really want to pile the bowl high. So,
Jennifer, if I'm using spiralizer, what length would you like me to cut my
Big noodle.
to cut, well, that's your preference. If you were feeding children, I'd suggest you left them whole because then they can have a lot of fun. But I would go in with I don't know, it's really your preference, Larissa. I tend to have them in a bowl, and I'm just going to show you this later. I've got a mezzalune, a half moon, and I just go in and sort of bash a little bit. But yes, I do think it's sometimes fun for children to have the sort of silliness of really long threads. So I'm going to use a sunshine yellow courgette, which of course is wonderful, and something else to get excited about produce wise.
Yeah, I like how yellow zucchinis look.
Yeah,
it's just.
And we could keep these. We could use these in a soup. I'm not throwing them away. They're organic. Let's see how many we've got here. So I'm taking my bowl over to my chopping board, and you'll notice there's a big bowl. Now we could very happily eat out of this, but you will certainly need a large bowl to be able to mix the sauce in a short while. So let's scrape that all into the bowl. Then I can remove my glove, and thank you to the mandolin. And just using some tongs here just to, again, introduce the courgettes to each other, get the colours moving. There we are. So that's ready for later. So all we've done so far is spiralize or mandolin our courgettes. And now we're going to work on the sauce. And it's one bell pepper dressing. And actually we could use tomatoes and just do a mango tomato dressing, but I'd like to highlight bell pepper dressing because when I was transitioning to this lifestyle, I don't know if this is a bit of an embarrassing confession or something to be proud of, But when I discovered this combination every day for 3 years, because it just tasted so good, I used it over salads, over zoodles, and it never disappointed me. And it was my one true thing while I was moving away from cooked and dense food. So this is my kind of love letter to mango and bell pepper dressing. And so I've specified one bell pepper, but this is a little on the small side. So I'm going to use some of this yellow one too. And I'll just show you my cutting technique as I whiz that a little bit quickly. It's to set the bell pepper firmly on the board, take the knife and go fairly close to the stalk, and you'll see why in a moment. You should be able to slice it off and keep the seeds inside. And then this is ready for the blender. We'll take the bottom off, chop and into the blender. And I probably won't use this because I think there's enough in there now. But what I would do if I wanted to use it would just be to slice down one of the sides of the pepper and then slide my knife underneath and round, paying attention. Et voila, and hopefully we've got all the seeds out in one. We've got a nice clean piece of pepper, but we won't use that today. So the other star is the mango, and we've talked about this mango already, and that's not, actually that might be enough. That might be enough for the dressing. You're going to put enough mango in to sweeten it to your preference. So it might be that you want to start a second mango, or it might be that this is enough. So let's return to this mango, which isn't a classic mango to demonstrate on because it does have the small pit. But what we're going to do is flip him over and go around the back of the pit and down. And look at that for a tiny bit. Can you believe it? Don't know if you can even see how small it is. It's the size of my ear. So that's highly unusual. So with a regular mango, you'd be left with a large stone, and then you would just slice around the stone and get as much flesh out of that rim as you possibly can. And then there is a nice chefy way to score a mango, but I'm looking at the time and we're going to shake our tail feathers. So I'm just going to scoop this mango into the container jug. Use a slightly smaller knife so I have control, because I keep my knives very sharp in the kitchen, and if you've got a sharp knife you must have control for safety. So I'm slicing off extra mango here. So do look out for these Noah mangoes because you're getting a lot of mango for your money. There we are. Now, I'm just keeping an eye on the time and perhaps speeding the plough a little bit. So I hope you're all able to keep up. I'm going to introduce tamarind to you, which some of you may be familiar with. It's a sweet fruit, and this happens to be grown in Thailand. It grows in these funky looking pods. And I just like it because it's something a bit different to add a little something extra. So we've pulled the shell off, and then it's quite straightforward. You'll see that there's some stringy pieces to pull off. And then we're left with a kind of fleshy interior that does contain some very large seeds, which is similar to carob, and take your knife right into the seed, so you're scoring the flesh, and then you can pop the seeds out and put the flesh in.
I've always wondered about that, so thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a friend bought me a box of these from an Asian supermarket, and that's where you're going to find them, in an Asian supermarket. I bought mine online. They're about £2 or £3 a box. That's what, about $3 or $4. And they're fresh, but they've got a shelf life for about 18 months. Yeah, just try something unusual. But the alternative, if you want to bring a richer flavour, would just be to take some garlic. I would say, looking at your little finger, as much as going down to the first joint. So really just a couple of centimetres, or well under an inch. And if you were going to use ginger, even though the Vitamix could handle it, I would suggest just giving a little bit of help by chopping your ginger down a little bit. And I'm going to go crazy and put it in as well. But to be honest, the tamarind doesn't add pungency, it's flavour more than anything. So in our jug, we've got peppers, we've got mango, we've got tamarind, or we may have ginger, or we may have decided we don't want ginger. If you had any spare tomatoes, you could pop your tomatoes in. It's a really versatile sauce. On with the lid, and again, in my wide blender, I think it's doubtful that I'll need the tamper, but if you've got a narrow-necked Vitamix, you might need to give it a bit of support. And I'm not going to taste test this, because I pretty much know that any combination of bell pepper to mango is going to be a success, and you'll have to trust me on that.
Jennifer, can you hear me? No, probably not, because of the blender. Okay.
Now that feels ready to me, and depending on which colour bell pepper you've used, you're going to get a different sauce. I hope you can see that this is a kind of, if you'll excuse I was going to call it egg yolk yellow, but it's more like a sunflower yellow. It's
Thanks.
yellow with a tinge of orange, so that's going to look very pleasing. So I'll sit that back there, just turn my Vitamix off. And now we're going to prepare the ingredients that are going to add texture and interest to our dish. And I'm starting with fresh herbs for their pungent aroma, and as I've mentioned before, if we can get the fresh ingredients right, we don't need to go in with the stimulants and the salt and the oil. And I found my tack with the chocolate. I found that my taste buds did adapt, and I actually prefer this way of eating. It feels very real to me, and it keeps me food. So I'm lucky in that my coriander is quite a neat bunch, so I can see the stalks are nicer texture without. So I'm just going to slice down with my knife, and hey presto, remove the stalks. And I appreciate that if you're using basil or a different kind of herb, you might need to spend a bit more time on that. I was going to talk about the mezzalune, but I think we'll stick with the knife now. I've got a large knife in my hand. I'm steady on the blade. I've got my fingers in a kind of claw shape close to the blade, and I'm going to go in with a rocking motion. So I move the knife across, my fingers retreat, tip of the knife stays on the board, and I'm chopping my herbs.
Jennifer, I don't
And
want
if
to
you
cut your
like,
flow. You're doing so beautifully well. I wish I could smell your kitchen right now. The herbs just look great. You mentioned the sweet tamarind. We know there's two kinds of tamarind. There's one
yes,
that's extremely acidic and sweet, and then there's one that's
yes,
just primarily sweet. You use the sweet
yes,
tamarind.
yes, and thank you for pointing that out, because let me see.
Come in a box,
Here's my
right?
box.
Yeah, it
It
came in a
says
box
sweet
called sweet
tamarind,
tamarind. Yes.
and that's what
Okay.
you're looking for, because there is a product you'll be able to find, and I hope you can follow me when I talk to Dr. Graham. I'm just going to add the herbs to the bowl.
Fantastic.
The tamarind, you can buy the tamarind paste, which is a preparation that you can buy again and possibly in most supermarkets or in a health food store, and it's a kind of runny liquid. And if you put a spoon into that and think it's going to be sweet, you're in for a shock.
Not. No, that's the extremely tart.
Yeah, so thank you. That's a really good point. So we have our chopped herbs, and we're using herbs like a vegetable here. Working it in. Next, we're going to go in with our cherry tomatoes. Small knife for control. I'm going to cut them into halves or quarters. I find, personally, I like these to be quite small in terms of mouthfeel. I don't like, ooh, these brown ones are so kind of juicy, they're just exploding. I don't like to have big pieces. That doesn't feel good to my brain when I'm eating. So I do like to have them on the smaller side. How are we doing for time, Larissa? Larissa's working in her kitchen.
We're coming to the close. We have about 5 minutes to the hour. So.
Okay, so what I'm going to do to speed along, and apologies, I was obviously could have gone a little faster at the start. I'm going to show you what we're going to do next, which is to scoop these in. And I do like to combine them at this stage rather than at the end, because I like everything to be evenly distributed. And then this is optional. This is spring onion or scallion. We're going to trim. Set the white part away for now because it's too pungent. And again, with that knife technique I just demonstrated, I'm going to use the large knife. Just going to make a claw with my hand and slice very finely. And this is going to be our garnish. And onion is something you may prefer not to have in your food, and that's a personal choice. I find I can handle a bit of onion. Okay, so speeding along. Let's return to our zoodles that have our herbs and our tomatoes. Let's take our sauce. And a professional tip that I learned from the Raw Advantage, Chris Kendall, is to create a little well in your bowl in the centre, and the sauce goes into the centre. And thereafter, it's much easier to combine. What we're doing is working this, and you should be getting some outrageous aromas coming through the dish. And again, apologies for rushing everyone, but hopefully you can take a bit more time over this. And perhaps
you're doing perfectly well.
Thank you. You can go back and add extra tomatoes, because I would personally be adding it turns out to be 8 ounces of tomatoes because we really want that colour and flavour. So I'm going to plate now. And again, if it was just me, trust me, I'd just be noshing it from the bowl. But I'm going to be ladylike and plate some for presentation. And you can see with the mandolined noodles, they're very easy to handle. So we're just going to pile those into a bowl here. Yes, and we know we're going to eat 3 times this amount, so we don't need to worry. That's
true.
that's the joy of this lifestyle, is you can eat and eat and eat.
Right.
And there we go. On top with the spring onions. And then a final flourish, if you did manage to source some chives, and it's very easy to have them growing here in your kitchen. And just being quick with some scissors, and again, these might be too pungent for some of you. Just snipping some chives over the top. And again, very sorry to rush everyone. But hopefully you can go back and put in all the time you need. We're just going to bring our dishes to the front here. And let's remind ourselves what deliciousness we've created. We've created a peach dream soup featuring heirloom tomatoes. We've got our beautiful edible flowers. We've got our cucumber in the bottom, our cucumber garnish. And we've got our wonderful little gem lettuce. And you can tell me how much fun you have eating that way. And here we have our sunshine zoodles, all the colours of the sun in here. Our spiralised or mandolin zoodles with fresh herbs chopped in. Colourful cherry tomatoes, and then dressed with fresh chives and green onion. So thank you very much for sharing a feast with me today. It's been an absolute joy.
Looks
Jennifer, they're
beautiful.
so delicious and so colorful. It's just such a pleasure to just look at them. I just, you know, don't want to eat them because they're so beautiful looking. And
I'm glad.
I've watched you being so busy in the kitchen. Thank you so much for spending this hour with us. We really love having you and enjoying this raw vegan food together.